Reading chapter 7. Yes, don't worry, the noise has stopped, so. Yeah, I guess it was some kind of fire alarm or something that started to run out of batteries. So I guess my dad dunked it under water last night, and then for some reason, right when he left to bring one of my sons to school, it just started going off for some reason in some undisclosed location. So no one could be able to shut it off, right? And then after about close to an hour of it going off, I went in and mentioned it to my mother, and I said, well, I just wanted to make sure, there's not a leak. I'm not sure where it's coming from, if it's one of the alarms, or if I'm just supposed to try to sniff it out and find it. But I just wanted to let you know. I didn't want to wake her or startle her too much. Her face is all where she fell at the casino the other day. She has a black eye, trying to rest. Didn't want to disturb her, but I went in just to tell her, just in case it's a leak or something. And then I figured, once you say something, all of a sudden, oh yeah, I just stuck it, was running out of battery, so I stuck it underwater. Then it just starts to go off right when you leave. They play these games, so that way if we say anything, then they can go, oh, see, they make a big deal. Yeah. It gets old, the fucking games these sick motherfucking pieces of shit play around here while they protect fucking sluts and drug traffickers. It's pissed a lot of people off for a long time. And the fact that they're carrying on the way they do, and they're not fucking giving it up already, and carrying on and continuing to push their justification of what they've been doing around here is sick, disgusting, and disturbing. And we're going to keep speaking out until the proper authorities report on what's going on here in Augusta, Maine. We're at the Governor Hill Mansion in Augusta, Maine. My name is Mary. Do I need to say it slower? Have I been saying it too fast, or what's the problem? Right, so the facts are the facts, and a lot of good people from around the world are aware just like we are, and I think that's what motivates people to do what they're doing and get involved with trying to help with the vaccines, the overprescribing of SSRIs. Can you see a lot of people are focusing on those things? Right, because if they were to even accuse the things that we're saying we know to be true, they could get sued for defamation. Well, what are you basing this off of? Just some crazy girl who lives with her parents? Some pothead? Some schizophrenic? Some conspiracy theory freak? Dangerous Karen, non-vaxxer, part of a cartel family? Right, so we've been playing these fucking games with you pieces of shit for years. And we told some of the state workers in 2012, this is fucking sick and disturbing, and instead of knocking it off, they carried forth. Right, and he beat up a little boy in the tub, his own child actually, and that mother had to take him to court. Black hand marks on his leg and scars on his neck. This isn't a fucking joke. And just that alone should be enough for you people to wake the fuck up. And the fact that this is carrying on the way it is, and all the other things that were going on around that time, and the private investigator and good doctors and people that disappeared once again. Yeah, you people are fucking sick, and you need to get some help. Get the fuck away from our kids. The proper authorities need to step in and get our children away from those sick fucks is what they need to do. We're right here, and we're perfectly of well, sound body and mind. And it's sick and disturbing how they're trying to label people talking about the vaccines as them being schizophrenic and in a psychosis. With what we went through in 2006 with those sick motherfuckers, and then them trying to cover that up, you sick fucking pieces of shit. And if anyone has a problem with me speaking that way, or it's unattractive, or that means we can't address the issues, you're a fucking piece of shit too. Right? Just jump in the pot with the rest of them, and you can all lick each other's assholes till you fucking die like the rest of them, you sick fucking cunts and slugs. Anyways, page 63. I am with you, and will give my life if necessary. Then Nuno sent word to his brothers, Peter and Diego, asking that they throw in their lot with the Master Dioviz too. Both refused. Now, many have given their lives. They might still be here physically, but they have given, their lives and all of themselves to try to help and bring forth this information. And when you see how they get attacked and ostracized, it's pretty scary. Hopefully. We sure hope so. Over the years, to be honest with you, when you actually think about what we're talking about and how long this has gone on, and how we've cycled through so many groups of people doing their investigations and analyzing and drug stings, it's amazing that we haven't completely fucking lost it. For real. It's amazing we haven't died of trauma. Yeah, it's hard to handle. I can't imagine. You know, you think of, we're very lucky, because you think of people that are in those kind of awareness states or whatever it is, you know, and then you have to deal with being homeless or dealing with the public, because you have to check them out, you know, day after day. Beep, beep. Be almost maddening, huh? I know, I can understand you over-medicating yourself, having to deal with all of that. We've been trying to address those issues on a societal level, and those programs always seem to get shut down, and the money and the funding goes into the hands of these little cesspools of fucking sick, deluded people out of these networks, where you can see there's a lot of innocent people getting killed, and it's nothing but crazy fucking people that are so dehumanized and have no empathy or compassion. It's fucking scary. So hopefully they're going to continue to address that, and the proper authorities here in Augusta, Maine report on the facts and concerns we're talking about, and they get our young children who were vaccine injured in 2013 behind our fucking backs after we'd already dealt with years of harassment from these fucking sick fucks within the Maine Parent Federation and the healthcare departments telling us we're bad mothers and going to kill other people for not vaccinating. You fucking sick pieces of shit. That needs to be addressed. Hopefully they do that. I know, right? 7:48 Monday morning, 3:23. We'll see what happens. Yeah, we're not holding our breaths. Unless we're doing breathing exercises, then we hold our breath. Oh, it's breathtaking. Anyways. Asking that they throw in their lot with the Master D of Is too. Both refused. Calling his own companions in arms together, Nuno explained the situation, outlined the risks, and then asked if they wished to follow him in the difficult but glorious undertaking upon which he was about to enter. As for myself, he said, I have the firm conviction of success with the help of God's grace. What did they think? His men were of one accord to follow him. Whenever you will be, a spokesman for them said, there we will also be. Whenever you will be, a spokesman for them said, there will we be also. We are ready to give our lives for you, for your honor, and in your service. With tears of gratitude, Nuno embraced them one after the other. The fidelity of his companions compensated for the sorrow caused by the refusal of his brothers. And thus, then and there, he formed the nucleus of his army, of which the Master D of Is would soon be sorely in need. At the head of this small group, his own men and few others who had been persuaded in Santarém to join them, Nuno was upon galloping post-haste in Lisbon. As he rode along, Nuno's spirits rose higher and higher. Now and again he drew his sword, read the inscription over and over, flashed it in the sunlight, and returned it to the scabbard. He was riding to liberate the overtaxed, oppressed, abused people of the entire realm. He was riding to drive his sword into the heart of the evil that had brought his people to spiritual and physical ruin. Bad governors. From that very day, through the men who rode behind him,
Nuno Alvarez Pereira became the principal character, even the dominant figure of Portugal's epic poetry. On that day he was beginning the glorious cycle of heroic deeds which named him, through the centuries that have followed, the national hero of his country and a saint. In a popular assembly in Lisbon directed by Alvaro Paes, the the widowed queen was declared deposed and the master of Aviz was proclaimed in her stead the defender and regent of the kingdom. Thank you. You're welcome. The popular assembly, the people proclaimed him King Don John I. The popular assembly, the people, proclaimed him King John I of free Portugal, that he might have counsel and assistance in governing Don John immediately, organized a council of 24 from among those who were most capable and faithful to him. The most authoritative of these, naturally, was Alvaro Paz, who has been chancellor under Don John's father. The next in importance was Dr. John das Rigas, who had been major chancellor under King Peter with Paes. Since das Rigas had but recently returned from Italy, where he had made a profound study of jurisprudence, he became the legislative mind of the new realm. When Nuno arrived in Lisbon and made his way to the newly formed council that had no army to defend it, he was stormed with cheers and applause. Don John ran forward and threw his arms about him. Everyone present well knew Nuno's ascendancy over the spirit of troops. The young knight's action outside the gate of St. Catherine had made him an idol. They asked him to be a member of the council and to assume complete charge of the army. Nuno and John were physical opposites, but they were spiritually similar. Don John, Donjohn, Don John. Don John. It's a dungeon, yeah, right? But they were spiritually similar. Don John was a natural statesman, able, strong of will, wise, forced during the reign of Ferdinand to be distrustful of those about him. He had become a shrewd judge of men. He had learned to choose those who could further his aims, those whom he could rely upon. He understood, too, how to avail himself of their help with great prudence and tact, without losing a shred of authority, and he had daring. He was ready to take chances. However, he was without Nuno's devotion. Nuno had chosen the Queen of Heaven as his lady, and he had grown saintlier day by day. Men loved him, not so much for his daring as for the beauty of soul that accompanied it, shining from his deep brown eyes. As inevitably happens, frequent thought of Our Lady had brought such graces to Nuno's soul that the night seemed to live for his reception of Holy Communion. He was never known to speak harshly of his enemies, but rather excusingly. He, though ladies, including Queen Leonora, had been doubly enamored of him for his goodness and manliness, he was ever virtuous. The same could not be said of John. However, Nuno was almost singular in those evil times, and only those who knew of his devotion to Mary knew his secret. Physically, Don John was tall, never wore a beard, had a rather square, commanding face. His lips were thin, his eyes somewhat small or black, vivacious. He was thin to the point of angularity, but strong. Nuno at this time wore a very full beard. He was scarcely of medium height, lean and wiry. His complexion was unexpectedly fair. His face was oblong, and its thinness accentuated by his long nose. The beard heightened the elongation of his face, and concealed a slight shortness of chin. One could hardly believe that in so slight a body could be such great strength of arm, such endurance. Yet everything about Nuno was revealed in his eyes, deep, alive, ingenious, brilliant under strongly arched brows. His habit of silent thought was manifested by a slight wrinkle which had already taken permanence on his forehead. Nuno was apparently a sanguine, melancholic temperament. He loved company, was slightly vain about his appearance, but he also liked moments of solitude, and there was a sharp line between his vanity, which was a desire that others should think well of him, and pride. In the presence of God, Nuno was as dust, and Nuno was usually in the presence of God. He seemed always to see the cheerful side of things, to such an extent that he sometimes seemed unconscious of obstacles. He paid scarcely any attention to those who were jealous of him. He was self-conscious about his long nose, but when he saw that his own men loved him despite this singularity, which marked him more as an aesthete, E-S-T-H-E-T-E, whatever that says, then a nay, E-S-T-H-E-T-E. Let's put that on the crossword. How do you say it? Ethete? No. Esthete? I'm going to have to look that one up. More has an S-T than a knife, and indulgently smiled at the jokes about it. Military comradeship, the esteem of his soldiers was of very importance to him. He looked upon each of his soldiers with genuine affection. He felt that each one was bound to him in a common destiny, and the superiority of command was to him nothing more than the sanctity of the cause for which they fought, and the authority of good example. The quality which Don John and Nuno held most in common was a sense of destiny and of duty. It was Nuno especially who had encouraged this quality in Don John. In himself it was manifest in leadership, and in the exorable way in which he punished any neglect of discipline or the deportment due to things and persons of the church. I skipped a line. In himself it was manifest in leadership, and in the exorable way in which he punished any neglect of discipline or deportment among his men, particularly any default of respect due to things and persons of the church, or of magnanimity and generosity towards the enemy. Woe indeed to any of Nuno's soldiers in the many battles subsequently fought who harmed a woman or child in any of the conquered regions. Woe to anyone whom Nuno knew to be guilty of blasphemy, a vice which he particularly strove to banish from his troops. So he did not like the women or children being hurt, or blasphemy. Now, what does one consider blasphemy? Within a few days after his arrival in Lisbon and his appointment by the council, Nuno had most of the troops of Lisbon under his standard, and on the strength of his great name alone and the threat he made, he obtained the surrender of the fortress of St. George. Before he had left the council, he said to John, God, who gave the city into your power, will give you also the castle. And it was so. A few days later, Nuno's rapidly multiplying troops occupied the fort of Almada on the other bank of the Tagus. While this was happening, Nuno's mother, who was then in Castile with the Lady Beatrice, was sent by the King of Castile to dissuade Nuno from supporting the revolution. The Lady Irene came to Lisbon, having been persuaded by the Castilian monarch that Nuno was doing a great wrong. She begged him to renounce his position on the Revolutionary Council and to fight rather in support of Queen Leonora. It was not long before Nuno persuaded his mother that his cause was just. He told her things he had witnessed at court, revolting and unjust, and asked her whether she thought a distant king in Villada, Castile, could see that justice was administered among the provinces of Portugal. He asked her to look at the record, to witness the present misery of the people. Lady Irene left not only convinced, but very proud of him. She charged him that if he held dear her blessing, he must follow Portugal's new King John completely and faithfully, and she promised to send him his other brother, Ferdinand. Then she returned to the King of Castile with Nuno's answer, and secretly sent Nuno's brother Ferdinand from Port Alegre to join Nuno and Don John I in their chivalrous war, to end what had been a succession of wars, and worse. One of the first thoughts of Nun Alvarez was to acquire a proper banner, one which would be a symbol of his pure intentions, and at the same time a continual reminder to his soldiers that they had to implore the protection of heaven in the heart of battle. He ordered a banner of white, bearing a red cross. The arms of the cross cut the banner into 4 fields of white. It was the cross of Galahad, reddened by the blood of the Redeemer, and in each of the 4 squares, respectively, were top left, the crucified Savior with the Virgin, and St. John at the foot of his cross, top right, Our Lady with the infant Jesus in her arms, lower left, St. George kneeling, lower right, St. James the Greater kneeling, hands joined in prayer. Before this banner was even ready, the King of Castile had sent his invading army charging into the provinces south of Lisbon. Don John called Nuno and appointed him regent of that entire section of Portugal, and begged him to go as soon as possible to defend it. Even before Nuno's departure, however, the Portuguese were holding a council in those provinces, independent of John, to decide what should be done. Many members, the governor of the region, Count Alvaro among them, felt that they should let the Castilian troops pass through the unmolested, because there seemed no possibility of stopping them anyway. The debate had grown strong when Nuno arrived. After presenting his credentials, which angered Count Alvaro because they placed Nuno in command over him, Nuno added fuel to the Count's fury by accusing him. Whoever fears the King of Castile or any other king has no place in this council. Here the question is to serve our country, not to weaken the courage of others by vain and useless words. The furious Count demanded a retraction. No, Nuno shouted, I only regret having said too little. What I have said for the good of our country and for Don John. His noble spirit knew no cravenness. Nevertheless, now, as never before, he felt the responsibility that rested upon him. Without a well-organized army, with only 200 lances, and without money to enlist new ones, his duty was to defend all the south of Portugal, and to make the people believe that he could do it. With the Memorare in his heart, Nuno set out for Alentejo, where he heard the arrival of the Spaniards at the frontier near Crete. Everywhere, Nuno solicited soldiers. By the time he reached Estremoz, where he established his general headquarters and passed his troops in review, there were about 300 horsemen and 1,000 infantry. The enemy, on the other hand, were a good 5,000 and were commanded by the flower of the Spanish nobility. With them, too, were several of the Portuguese grandees who had meantime sided with Castile. Among these latter was Peter Alvarez, the prior to Crete, Nuno's own brother. One of Nuno's greatest dangers was that his troops, realizing how few they were against the enemy, outnumbered almost 5 to 1, would decide not to follow him. The cowardly, though seemingly prudent, advice of Count Alvaro was taken up by the citizenry, Nuno had hoped to raise many more than these 300 horsemen, it was with deep gravity that he watched them pass in review. When they had gathered before him, he paused a moment before his clear voice rang out over the motley group. "Are the Castilians many?" His voice sang with great calm. "The greater will be our honor. If anyone is afraid, he should leave now. With the rest, a few but brave and true Portuguese, I will conquer with the help of God." Not even one abandoned him, resolved thus to conquer or to die. One and all, they set out for Crete with a vast blast of trumpets that was almost out of keeping with so small a major force. It was Nuno's opinion that promptness of attack would be to their advantage. About halfway to Crete, at break of day, they met with Roy Goncalves, an equerry of the prior of Crete. The latter had sent this messenger to counsel Nuno again to desist from his mad enterprise, but Nuno, who was always aroused to even higher courage when openly invited to cowardice, especially to the betrayal of his country, replied, "Tell my brother that I do not need his counsel. Moreover, he should advise the other lords, his companions, that I and my men shall die, rather than betray Portugal." The equerry hesitated. "Do as I tell you," Nuno spoke with fire. "Do it for me, and for the bread you ate in my house. Carry back my answer, and make haste to mount your horse. Away!" Frightened by the vigor with which Nuno spoke and the fire blazing in his eyes, the equerry did not wait for the second invitation. He turned his horse and sped away at a wild gallop. None Alvarez, for all his saintliness and gentility of soul and almost infinite compassion on misery or injustice wherever he found it, held his country first in his heart after his God. Later, when already old and far advanced on the path to perfect sanctity, we shall see him recover all the energy of youth, all his warlike enthusiasm, when for a brief moment, well, the word youth had, and then like warlike, just wrinkles came into mind, right? My eyes are playing tricks on me. We shall see him recover all the energy of youth, all his warlike enthusiasm, when for a brief moment someone flashes before him a threat of danger to his country. It was the 6th of April, 1384, when the two armies approached each other near Atolarios. Atolaris. Nuno, only 24 years old, his troops greatly outnumbered, used tactics that were completely new in Portugal. The Castilian scouts, their own forces, still stand at some distance, were astonished to see Nuno from a square of his impoverished cavalry, which was badly armed and hence, with good reason, believed unable to withstand even the first shock of the Castilian squadrons. Then Nuno divided the square into vanguard. Rear guard, and two wings. The whole was defended by a hedge of inclined lances, with a second man ready at each lance to grasp it if it fell. It looked like a fortress of flesh and bone. In the very center rode Nuno Alvarez Pereira, mounted on a mule, giving his orders and suggestions in a calm, firm voice. Finally, when the men were as he wanted them, Nuno said, "My friends, impress well upon your hearts 4 things. First of all, recommend yourselves to God, to the Blessed Virgin, his mother. Then remember that we are here to serve Don John, the master of Aviz and King of Portugal, and do honor the country we represent. Thirdly, remember that we are defending ourselves, our homes, our country. We are fighting to free ourselves. Fourthly and finally, have patience and courage. Then he jumped from the mule. He knelt down before his banner that rolled above him in the wind and prayed. One by one, the men of his command, to the very last man, dismounted and fell to his knees. Some wept, and many kissed the ground as if it were to be their grave. The picture was rather tragic than heroic. From afar came the rumble of the advancing troops of Castile. The Portuguese rose, and the horsemen sprang into their saddles. Nuno, after adjusting his helmet, which he had removed in prayer, seized his lance from one of the pages and cried out, "Friends, have confidence in me. God will help those who assist me, and he will demand of you the account of my death if I die here in the center of this ring through your fault." Yeah, so someone is really jumping in here, and they're saying that they themselves having the patience, those four things, how that can be applied to any life, whether it's having patience and courage. Right, that doesn't mean just run and jump off a cliff, right? Don't be a pussy, just jump in that dark, murky water not knowing what's in there. Right. So it's a matter of not being naive. Having patience and courage, right? It could be they're applying that to anything, whether it's caring for patients or children or themselves. Having patience with yourself can be difficult sometimes, yeah? It gets easier. Used to be. Not anymore. Good to hear. You're driving yourself nuts. Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay. You like it? Oh, good. Congratulations. Then I don't feel sorry for you. I'm happy for you. I guess, yeah, a matter of perspective. They were just jumping in there with those four things and applying that courage and patience to life itself. Growing a garden, painting a wall. Yeah, exactly. Life. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I agree. I absolutely agree. Application theory, right? Knowing their love for him, he had played this trump against all their fears. His face was shining. He looked from one soldier to the other, affectionately, confidently, as though he knew that each single one would bring him through the battle safe. Then men fairly vibrated under his glance. They forgot everything else but that he, their leader, was the hope of Portugal, and they had to protect him. Suddenly and rudely, the solemn silence was shattered by clamoring the trumpets echoing through the valley. An overwhelming shout rolled from 5,000 approaching Castilians. "Castile! St. James!" The enemy advanced rapidly, even though the sun was high, flashing fire from their arms and armor. "Portugal! St. George!" Nuno's few troops shouted back, now steady at their post, each man having suddenly, by Nuno's challenge, become an individual fighting unit. The Castilian cavalry charged, certain of victory, with no plan other than confidence of wiping out the Portuguese by sheer force. On the very first impact, the Castilian horses were impaled on the front row of Portuguese lances, and as the Castilian troops piled up behind, a deadly rain of arrows and missiles of all description poured from Don Nuno's compact square to bring terrible carnage to the shocked Castilians. of all description, right? Not direction, of all description. It does seem like direction would make more sense there. I know I almost said that thinking the same thing, but it does say of all description. Immediate confusion resulted in their ranks, followed by terror. Seeing the leaders dead, the Castilians in the rear, who had not expected to fight at all, began to fall back, and then to flee wildly and ignominiously. At once Nuno ordered his horsemen to give chase. The Castilian infantry, having lost the protection of their own cavalry, was cut to pieces. It was an overwhelming Portuguese victory. The sun now shone only on Nuno and his men, masters of a field covered with dead, among whom were many of the foremost nobility of Spain. Nuno did not hesitate. He wanted to take advantage of his victory and to surprise the many pockets of the Spanish-held parts of Portugal. He gathered his men and left at once. Tirelessly, that same day, they won over the great part of the surrounding cities and villages that still hesitated in their allegiance, and regained every one that was occupied by a Spanish garrison. These latter gave only weak resistance when they saw Nuno and his men galloping triumphantly towards their gates, and some surrendered at once without raising a sword. This victory had a great influence on the outcome of the entire war. It immediately gave Don John in Lisbon his needed strength to lead Portugal into at least a semblance of free and national unity. However, Nuno and Don John knew well that Castile could send another army. The King of Castile had thought it necessary to send even 5,000 at first, but now he would send 3 times that number. It is 8:18 in the morning here. On the following day, Nuno walked barefoot from Monforte to Santa Maria de Assamar, a distance of 6 miles, over cobblestones and rough fields. He wanted in this manner to show his lady that he knew that she won the victory that he had fought for her. When he arrived at the church in Santa Maria de Assamar, he found it befouled and profaned. The Castilians had conquered their cavalry in it. With his own hands, Nuno silently swept out the entire church and tried to put it in order. Then he knelt and vowed to Our Lady that he would erect, in thanksgiving and in reparation, a truly imposing temple in her honor. He did. This is one of the sanctuaries of Portugal today, and a similar sanctuary followed other great victories, one at Aljubarrota in honor of the Rosary, and the greatest of all in Lisbon in honor of Our Lady of the Scapular. At that time, the devotions of the Rosary and the Scapular were popular, as devotion in the United States is today through the miraculous medal. Almost every year wore the scapular and understood what it was, and people prayed the Rosary. The fervor with which these devotions were practiced was an indication of a person's spiritual life. Indication of a person's spiritual life. The times were so wretched, with Hershey rampant, papal schisms, universal wars, thievery, and sensuality, that the great promises which Our Lady made over the Rosary and Scapular were not only necessary inducements, but often seemed not enough. As we look back at this period, as we witness the miracles of grace and the military of political victories all over Europe that followed the use of the scapular and the Rosary, we can see that the Blessed Virgin had obtained from her Son permission to fight the evils of the time and to defeat them by a very minimum of effort on the part of her wandering children. She but needed their wills. She but needed that they should turn to her, then she could do the rest. In subsequent years, despite the reminders of Pope Leo XIII and his encyclicals on the Rosary, and this same Pope's appeal to all the wear the scapular, followed by a similar appeal on the part of Pius VI, Pius X, Benedict XIV, Pius XI. Many Catholics of today have forgotten the antidote to universal war and sin that Our Lady brought to the world in the 13th and 14th centuries. That is why Our Lady had to come down in 1917, herself at Fatima, where Blessed Nuno was to win a great and seemingly impossible victory, under the banner of her scapular and with the prayer of the Rosary. There, after predicting World War II of the 1940s, she would say, "If the world is consecrated to my Immaculate Heart, will take my scapular and say my Rosary." She held them both in her hands. There will be peace. But now we are ahead of our story. The King of Castile lost no time retaliating after Nuno's victory. At once he sent about 15,000 troops and the strong Castilian fleet to lay siege to Lisbon. Don John immediately sent for Nuno and asked him to go to Oporto and accompany a Portuguese fleet that was being prepared to sail to the aid of the capital. On the way, Nuno happened upon a great convoy of supplies that was going to the Castilians at Lisbon and seized it. The King of Castile tried now to bribe Nuno. He sent a Jewish banker from Valida. Was that like the boogeyman? Well, yeah, in a sense, just kind of an experience or something to help the children be good or go to bed. Right, I mean, they gotta get up early in the morning and work the fields or whatever it was. I mean, yeah, it's, you think, talking about 1300s, and then they fast forwarded to 1917. Right, so it's interesting when you start getting those kind of things, and you can go to different parts of the world and examples of people using those same kind of tactics to help people stay in line or obey, be good. Right, and you could see how some people might use that or go overboard. Right, it's not to scare them. Well, it is a little bit, right? Put the fear of God in them. Not the devil. Right, can you see how there's like certain boundaries or... Right, well that's not teaching them anything. They're just telling them to be quiet because you said so. Or the Grim Reaper's gonna come take their head off. That's not very nice. I know, now they don't even dare to talk. That's abuse. Right, I mean, where do you draw the line, right? So to each their own. These are simple things, really. It eliminates a lot of the stupid, maybe debate and flooding and clouding of a lot of our systems. That helps really serious infractions and crime and fraud and abuse hide behind all those veils of people just crying about scabs and profiting from it and suing each other. It's bad. It's so bad when you actually think about it, and the feeding and the chasing and the investigations and fearing of nations and non-vaxxers and Nazis. It's absolutely fucking sick and disturbing. I know, just the thought of it, see how it changes the tone, vocabulary, profanity starts to come out. Now, am I evil, or am I just speaking about evil things, and I'm expressing myself? Right, in a safe way, I would think so. I mean, if someone came in and said, hey, you want to keep it down? Hey, that's kind of bothering us, it's rude, I would do that. Right, on these kind of things, you can just change the channel. If it's bothering you, turn the volume down. Oh my God, I can't listen to someone be so profane and hateful.
Right, but I'm sure, you know, if someone was abusing your children and they were being held hostage, no one's saying anything, they're just, hey, you wanna buy some kimchi? Kimchi, whatever. Right, sure, nice watch. Right, we're not picking on anybody in particular, these are normal things that have gone on for years, like back to the 90s. Old playbooks and tactics and just trends, popular things amongst certain loops and groups. Why is everybody wearing red today? Did I miss something? Was it on the calendar? Everyone's wearing green. What the hell is St. Patrick's Day? Yeah, I don't know, man. Hopefully. You're welcome. We'll keep reading more in a little bit. Yeah, we're at 45 minutes again, so. Yeah, I said I do a couple 3/4 of an hour ones, so. You're welcome. I really hope so. We're right here when people want to talk about the facts and concerns and address the actual issues and the children that have already been tortured and abused and that are still in the custody of their abusers. That needs to be addressed. And how they've gotten away with that, what's been going on over the years, that all needs to be addressed. When you think about what's been happening here with the vaccines and the overprescribing of SSRIs and the targeting of Nazis and Karens and non-vaxxers and cartel families. I know we've shown you that. Yeah, and we told them back in 2010, you carry through with that, it's going to get really bad. And to watch how bad it's gotten. I know, and the people trying to prevent it and educate others getting trampled on and taken out left and right. It's so frustrating and angering, I can't even tell you how sickening it is to us. And then when you're talking about the children that are still in the burning car and the hostages, I mean, it's hard for us. It's amazing the situations that are kind of already done, right? People have been killed, it's the aftermath, and they're just telling the story. I know sometimes you sit there just listening to it or watching some of the documented footage. It's just the emotions. You can't help but cry. And it takes a lot out of you. It can take your breath away, suck the life right out of you. It can give you life and motivate you to want to try to help bring awareness and clarity and understand the importance of educating the public systems and keeping a healthy conscience just in general. What does that even mean? Right. Exactly. Right, and then when talking about the situations, the kids in the burning car, you're in a chase. Right, I mean, in those moments, I mean, it's amped up, right? The anger, the emotion. It's hard to almost cry and feel the pain, right? It's like then when it's died down, you start to feel the bumps and the bruises and the tenderness. You might start to cry or even scream in anger or frustration. Especially, and then if another situation might be arising where that's happening again, and you're trying to prevent those things from happening. Right, I mean, recognizing patterns, and then just every time, you know, someone turns the page, if you think there's going to be an explosion, again, there's boundaries, right? Oh no, every time they turn the page. Well, maybe in your world, so we all have to wear a safety harness? Get the fuck out of here. Right, so can you see how there's kind of sensical boundaries here? Yeah, a lot of people just kind of want to seem to check boxes and then make mandates. Mm-hmm. I hope so. Oh yeah, it can be difficult, and you see them when you're in the chase or those situations or the hostages, right? I mean, you might be angry, you might not be just sitting there constantly crying. Well, if that were true, right? I know it gets old with these sick fucking people living in their entitled, packaged worlds. Fucking sick. Really sick. We sure hope so. If you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, or you need help with any of that, suggestions as to how we can help our children without breaking the law, that would